All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's session put on by Talent Collective. We have a really exciting topic here, a very timely topic here to discuss. Mostly it's going to be around some US policies, which obviously have a very global impact as well. Some recent policies that have been implemented in US that have to do with tariffs, DEI, immigration. We will not have time to cover everything because there's just endless opportunity for discussion around this. But this topic, I think, is one, again, really timely and really affects recruiting. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have questions about it and are wanting to see how it's affecting people's businesses. And so we put together a panel here today with three just amazing people who I think will really share a diverse set of experiences, perspectives. And so we'll get to hear some really real world impacts of all of these policies today. So we'll get off with some introductions in just a moment, but until then, I want to say welcome to everyone who's here, and please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You're welcome to put your name, your LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with other people here on the call, and where you're calling in from. We always love to hear that. Also, as you're hearing the discussion unfold, feel free to put any questions you have for our panelists in the chat. I'll just keep an eye on those. And we may save them for the end, or if it's really relevant for the discussion we're having at any given moment, I'll just chime in with those as we go. Before we get started, for anyone who is not in the loop about what Talent Collective is, we are a community for women in the talent acquisition space. We put on really great programming, virtual programming just like this. But we also do a lot of in-person events. We have a mentorship program for women in TA, peer mastermind groups, and a whole lot more too. So if you're curious to learn more, please feel free to reach out to me. And last but not least, a very big thank you to our panelists here. We have Gerry Crispin, who is a lifelong student of hiring, Matt Alder, who is a producer and host of the Recruiting Future podcast, and Jacob, who is talent manager at Drivemode. So with that, we'll actually let each of them introduce themselves and share a little bit more about their background so you have some context on their perspective and the perspective that they'll be bringing to the conversation today. So Gerry, do you want to kick us off here?
Sure. The brief and quick one is, as you said, I'm a student of recruiting. I really work with my partners in crime, Barb Bruce and Chris Hoyt, to run CareerXroads, which really is a community of talent acquisition leaders in very large companies. And our goal is to help them as peers and colleagues to be able to talk with one another and really elevate their game.
Amazing. Thanks. All right. And Matt, you're up next.
Great. Well, hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Matt Alder. I have been running the Recruiting Future podcast for 10 years now. So over the course of doing that, I get to speak to talent acquisition leaders from all over the world, and I'm a sort of keen observer of markets and everything that's going on. I'm actually based in Scotland, which used to be part of the EU, but isn't now, but is kind of EU adjacent, as it were. And my podcast has a big audience in the US and a big audience in the EU and the UK as well. So here to hopefully bring a little bit of international perspective to the discussion.
Amazing. Thank you, Matt. All right. And Jacob.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob. I like the term Krista used about me. I was probably the only recruiter that's boots on the ground. I'm currently the talent acquisition manager at Drivemode, which is a software arm which we are owned by Honda. So we build all the companion apps for both their automotive and future electric vehicles and current vehicles, their electric bikes in Japan. Been recruiting for about 15 years. I got introduced to recruiting about 21 years ago, fell in love with it and went to school for it, learned about it, been in the game for a very long time, been in startups for the last 12 years, from employee number 10 to employee number 300, to grow to the hundreds to the thousands. So it's been an amazing adventure so far. And I think when I joined Drivemode here, we were 5 individuals about 2 years ago now, and now about 70. So, it's been an amazing ride and happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you all. And with that, I think we'll start off with Jacob. Would love to dive into some of the things that you're seeing firsthand, since you are, like you said, boots on the ground, running a recruiting team and doing recruiting yourself. So tell us what you've seen firsthand and how the recent US tariffs, we'll start with the tariffs topic, have slowed hiring and delayed product launches at Honda/Drivemode.
I mean, it did hit us big time. If people work at a Japanese company, your fiscal year starts in April, which is, I guess, good on our side because we didn't make a bunch of decisions in November, December, and then all the policies change in January, February, and then we're stuck. So we had these massive plans to hire. We were supposed to grow the recruiting team, probably triple the size of the team here. As soon as the tariffs were in place, everything paused, everything. And when we talk about readjusting our budgets, it wasn't like, oh, can we save 20,000 here or 50,000 here? We're talking in the millions that we had to cut and save. And that's jobs for people here in the US, all across the US. That's for investment in technologies here in office space. And originally where we think about this, the automotive car is actually made in Mexico, then back to the US, back to Mexico. Are we getting tariffed each time? Only tariffed one time. Is it where it's going to be officially sold? And then we get, as most people who work in automotive, parts are shipped from all over the world. So is each product, each thing being tariffed, then the car itself? So how many times is this going to happen? And we have manufacturing in Columbus, Ohio, where we're making the batteries and other things. I know that affected hiring here. Basically, Honda wants to invest in technology. They want to catch up to the Teslas, the Rivians, the Lucids, all of that. So we actually had to delay hiring. We cut our hiring by 20%. We also moved a bunch of roles that we could hire this summer are now moved to early next year. Then we also couldn't grow the recruiting team at the same size that we wanted. And we're still up in the air today with tariffs, right? I mean, if you see today's climate this morning, oh, extra tariffs on Russia and the Ukraine war, extra tariffs that might happen, any kind of allies from there. What's going to change tomorrow? If you know what, Japan is not working out, we're going to do a 50% tariff. That's going to affect even more of us here, affect our hiring and how we want to grow. So it's not just costing Americans maybe more money, but it's costing people jobs. And so that's kind of where it's affecting us here, boots on the ground. And when we had to change everything, I met with people across here in the US and Japan, and we were able to make cuts and really save some of the hiring, but not the growth that we wanted.
Yeah, I feel like those are some pretty common themes of what I've been hearing as well. Gerry, would love to hear your perspective. You run a community, as you mentioned, CareerXroads, of some of the largest, most influential and elite brands out there in the US. So I'm curious to hear what your members are saying about the tariffs and the impacts. Is it slowing hiring across all industries that we're hearing about, or just those one kind of like more traditionally impacted by tariffs like automotive, electronics, energy?
It's like putting everything on pause.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Jacob's comment because you're really talking about the nuances of all the different kinds of things that a company has to go through piece by piece in order to figure out what is the impact that it's going to be on us. And if on day two there changes one little bit, you start over again. So you're in this loop of trying to figure out how many people do I need to do what I need to do. In fact, I'm not sure what I need to do. And as companies get larger, when you're talking about a Walmart or an Amazon or what have you, you're talking about thousands and thousands of products and services, and you're talking about an incredible morass, if you will, of people all over the world engaged. And so, yeah, it's the actions that we're seeing in companies at every level, in my opinion, are to put hiring on pause to some degree. And once you do that, you ask yourself, well, how long is this going to last? And depending upon how you think about tariffs and other issues that are also impacting the level of uncertainty, that pause could be a long one. And if you do that, now the issue is, okay, how many recruiters do I actually need in order to accomplish that? And that's wherein, we start to have problems relative to getting hired if we're in transition, or starting to become a little bit fearful about having a job and worried that, I need to put together a plan B, because downstream, I might be one of those who loses my job.
Mhm.
And so therein lies a lot of the difficulty that's going on right now. And I don't think, by the way, that it's going to be over shortly.
Mhm. Yeah, we're in it for the long haul, right?
We are.
Add in all the AI taking all the jobs.
So one of the things before Matt starts, because I know he has other issues relative to it, is really kind of the psychology of, do you want to get into recruiting? Do you want to stay in recruiting? What how can I have the kind of attitude that allows me to weather the storm and sustain that? What do I need as a person, as an individual, to surround myself with so that I can sort of embrace and enjoy this adventure that we're all on?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Gerry. All right, Matt. So we will shift over to you. So, as you mentioned, your audience is both US and UK and broader Europe based. So, what have you been hearing with regards to the effects of the US tariff policies on hiring?
Yeah, I think the key word that Jerry said there for me was uncertainty, and it's the uncertainty that's the real problem here. So, as of this morning, because I had to check, I think the UK is in for 10% tariffs, and I think a couple of days ago it was announced that it was 30% on the EU from the 1st of August, which is not very long. It's not very long away. So there's a significant impact. 15% of all UK 15% of all UK goods are exported to America, and 20% of all EU goods are exported to America. And there's some vast sort of sums of money on the table. And we've also got to remember that the EU is 27 different countries. Sometimes it just gets talked about as the EU, but it's 27 different countries. And also, it is very influential on world trade. So if you think back to the decision that Apple made a couple of years ago to change their charger to a USB-C, that was driven by EU legislation, which meant they couldn't sell the iPhone in the EU anymore if it had a different charger, and they just changed it all over the world. So significant, significant amounts of money, significant markets. In terms of the effect on jobs and hiring, it's more to do with the uncertainty and how that's affecting the economic outlook. So a lot of the European economies were quite weak on growth anyway. And, growth predictions for the UK, for example, have been factored downwards because of, with tariffs being a contributory factor. There's a big thing with the UK and steel, which has separate tariffs. So what it means is that the predictions for the economy are worse than they were, and that's what's affecting hiring across the board. So it's kind of a knock-on effect, if that makes sense. So job advertising, job postings are down, right the way across Europe and the UK at the moment, and that's being driven by economic uncertainty and kind of very weak growth outlooks. And this, of course, is before the tariffs have actually started. So it's the uncertainty and its effect on economic forecast that is driving a lot of companies to pause or lay off people.
Yep. Thank you. Let's shift to talking a little bit about like the local talent strategy versus global. Jacob, I'm curious, with the tariffs pushing companies to reconsider their supply chains, how is that influencing where they choose to hire talent?
Well, we're very lucky that we have an office in Japan in Tokyo, and an office here in the US, and it has affected it, right? I mean, you think about the most expensive engineer probably in the world is in the Bay Area, especially when you're competing with Bang or Mang now, because Meta, where they're getting 1.2 million in stock. I mean, we're looking at the AI battle right now, where Mark Zuckerberg are offering people $4 million a year to come work for them. And so when you think about the tariffs and the uncertainty that we keep bringing up here, why would you hire in the Bay Area? I'm not sure where the tariffs are going to be, how much more cost it's going to be. So we are moving roles from the US to Japan. We've moved several roles to Japan already, where one engineer here is probably 2 to 3 there in Japan. Now, I'll be honest, the market is a lot smaller there for engineering, so it does take more time. But I think we've talked about this a few times where people are scared about being laid off or let go. If you look at Honda's reputation, they haven't laid off in over 20 years. So they're very strategic about their hiring. They're not just going to hire and then like, oh, we don't know yet. We bring on a lot of contractors here, and we're giving a lot of people good opportunities for 6 months, maybe a year. But once they're done with the heavy lifting, we have our regular engineers for maintenance. So it very much is affecting. Even we bring in on our first ever contractor in Brazil. And we've never done that before. I have a meeting later on today to get that set up, the entity out there and everything, because it's a lot cheaper than here in the US. Because we have to look at ways to save money because the tariffs are affecting where we want to hire, and we're venturing into new areas. So, because like we said, who knows what can happen tomorrow? And so, yes, it is affecting where we are hiring. And luckily, we have another office in Japan already.
Yeah, thank you. And Matt, what about you from your UK perspective? How do you see multinational companies adapting their talent strategies in response to the US protectionist policies?
Yeah, I think there's a few things here. I think, as Jacob said, there is a focus on other markets in terms of, where they're kind of sort of focusing their attention. The UK did a trade deal with India a few weeks ago that also covers some aspects of immigration and tax and things like that, with the thought of actually, kind of bringing more Indian workers to the UK. So there's a sense of kind of looking at looking at other markets from a talent perspective. The other interesting thing is, particularly in science, there is a sense that some of the top US talent could be available for poaching and moving to other countries, particularly in like government-backed sort of science fields and things like that. So some companies are seeing the US as a place to recruit from. I think the other thing to say, just in terms of sort of workforce mobility and things like that, there is a genuine concern about people with visas going to the US and being being arrested and all that kind of stuff. There was all over the kind of European news today. There was a case of an Irish guy who outstayed his visa by 3 days because he had a medical issue, and he ended up being thrown in prison for 3 months before he was deported. So stories like that kind of undermine confidence in sort of business travel and actually sort of moving people around with visas and things like that. So that is that's definitely an issue. So yeah, it's kind of it's a number of different things, but I think they're the ones that kind of would really stand out for me.
Yeah, we had an interesting question in the chat come up too. Curious to open it up to any of you. Are you seeing or hearing of US engineers or other talent moving to other countries? A reverse brain drain, so to say. Sounds like some of their friends have gotten laid off looking at India because it's easier visa process for people of Indian origin. So are any of you hearing of talent actually moving out of the US?
It's definitely happening. And it's happening. It's going to happen. It's going to have a bigger impact in the second half because it's not just tariffs. What Matt is doing is opening it up to so many other things that are causing the uncertainty, right? So we're really talking about the fact that immigration, for example, is a key issue in the United States, and in some instances is pretty frightening in relation to how it's coming across or depicted by the media, and much of it is pretty damn true. So the reality is, if you're making it more difficult for me to do my job here in the United States. As someone who came from another country, went to school for 4 years or maybe 8 years in college, got my PhD, etc. And yet I'm now starting to be uncomfortable and concerned whether I'm as welcome. And if I happen to express myself in a way that is inappropriate for the government, we're acting like some governments we often criticize in terms of how we're talking about deporting them or detaining them or what have you. So yeah, that's not a good thing. And so some of the best and the brightest certainly are open to being poached for other countries. I have seen a number of incidents in terms of which folks moving to Canada, for example, and to the EU as well. But keep in mind, some of the problems that we're facing in the United States exist in almost every country. So cultural attitudes and the nuances around them are something that everyone needs to understand. And so United States folks who may not have the experience on a global basis, they may find themselves going from, the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt or Jacob, anything to share?
I can
And
add in there about
sorry,
hiring.
Jacob.
Oh, sorry, Matt. Sorry. To add in there, pretty much every month, at least one person I'm hiring from another country to come here. Some see people still want to come here, still want to work. Now, it might be because of the industry, right? We work in automotive, electric vehicles. If anyone sees the new Honda Zero with some assist driving and it's just really cool technology. So we are getting people that want to come here. But we're talking from Europe, mostly from Japan that want to come here. And then if we want to talk about immigration per se, coming from a Mexican descent, right? My grandparents came to the border about almost 90 years ago, and they gave them the green card at the border. It took an hour, So when we look at, I've grown up where family members have gone to deal with all that and everything, and it's really good conversations with people locally in my office, people who are not in tech and hearing their thoughts on immigration. But for me being in hiring, I'm seeing people still want to come here, and I get applicants from all over the world for our positions here in New that want to move here. So maybe from my end, I haven't seen anyone really leave, but I can see that totally happening for sure.
I will say that from a data point of view, there's been a huge reduction in the number of students coming to the United States who are from other countries. So we're talking, universities throughout the United States are seeing and concerned about the reduction in students. And a lot of those students many of them are the ones who want to stay in the US when they've worked here and go to work for Honda and others who might be here in the US. So as we look down the road the next couple of years, if we don't figure out how to adjust for that, it could be a problem.
And can I just kind of add to that as well? Again, sort of pulling out something that Gerry was saying. This is not just a US phenomenon. The pressures and conversations around immigration are happening all over Europe as well. The UK is being hit by a vast reduction in foreign students because of some visa law changes that were made, in response to this kind of whole debate. And it's there's been it's obviously a series of elections across Europe that have where the political kind of needle has shifted or the government has changed. So this is an issue in many countries, not just the US.
Yeah, thank you. And what about anything additional to add about reshoring? So companies balancing the desire to reshore jobs with that global reality, the reality of global talent and cost constraints as well.
I'll tell you. So yeah, I mean, I love this issue because there's so many different layers that we're having to deal with. And every company, depending upon the size, scale, what have you, sees that within their industry and so on. But there's no question that it's going to be a tough issue looking forward, to see where we go with all of this. So I'm just going to stop for the moment, but um, yeah, I'd be interested, Matt, in your view on this.
Sorry, viewer, which bit? The reshoring bit.
Yeah, so just trying to balance the reality of the global talent market and then cost constraints, if there's anything to add on that.
Yeah, I think that sometimes the reality of what the global talent market actually looks like kind of seems to bypass politics in terms of where the talent shortages are, and all of those, all of those kind of things. So I think yeah, it really sort of depends from industry to industry, but I think that um, the talent is where the talent is, and we've got shortages in all kinds of in all kinds of industries, and sometimes the practicalities of moving industries, whole industries or whole things to other countries just don't kind of meet the reality of the way that where the talent is, if that makes sense.
All the
Mhm.
actions that we're taking on a political basis, if the outcomes aren't that we have more jobs here in the United States, or that in the UK there's more jobs for UK citizens, et cetera, then there's real failure to the
Mm, mm.
political effort to make that happen.
And I think where that fails is around the skills mismatch. So you kind of have UK industries that are declining. There's a real sense of we want to bring this industry back, or we want to do this, but there aren't the skills or even sometimes the population numbers to do it. And very often I don't see strategies in place to fill that skills gap or deal with the reality of those issues. And I think that's one of the big things that's the big problem that sits behind this.
Yeah. Matt, we got a question in the chat from Christy. So, what is the general opinion in the UK or Great Britain of US recruiting professionals working in Great Britain? Specifically, would a dual citizen of US and Great Britain be received positively in Great Britain?
100%, 100%. The British companies have a very, very high opinion of US recruiters, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on this. I'm on this webinar. So yeah, no, 100%. I think the issue, the only issue with that is at the moment, talent acquisition jobs are very difficult to find in the UK. The market is not good for recruitment jobs at the moment. But generally speaking, yeah, 100%.
Same here. So apples to apples. Okay. And another question in the chat that I would love to address. So when you add in AI into the economic uncertainty, is it impacting hiring trends in a similar way as tariffs?
Yes.
Mm.
I mean, AI may have the most impact on jobs everywhere, including in recruiting. And the speculation and conversation about that is probably at a peak. We're still waiting for some of the use cases to be as clear, in terms of what that means. Obviously, we're always looking for the increase in the productivity of an individual recruiter. But when you get past, some of the basic issues of how AI can help do some of the transactional pieces of what we do, when we start thinking about the strategic issues of what we do or could do, we're really going to affect the total number of recruiters that we need to be working in the trench. And I think that we're going to see significant increases in talent acquisition and human resources for operational approaches to how we use AI to measure and understand what's going on and audit, and assess what the tools and technologies are. And fewer recruiters who are doing what we consider to be the human side of things. But the top of the line, the top of the funnel, I think increasingly is going to be handled with automation and with AI that appears much more human than even recruiters are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to be a scary time for a few.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add to that. I think at this moment in time, I think that there are companies who are, having layoffs, whether it's recruiters or in the broader sense of their company, and they're using technology and AI just as a cover story for that. Because actually, I can think of a couple of companies who are doing this. It's like, I'm not actually quite sure it's going to, you don't really have a plan to use it to replace the people that you're laying off. So I think that that's kind of going on at the moment. I think the critical thing for me, and I did a presentation about this last week, is if AI is freeing up, certainly in the short term, if it's freeing up capacity within TA teams, there's a real question about how do you monetize that capacity, because extra capacity doesn't have to necessarily mean layoffs if there are other things that those people can do that bring value to the organization. And I think it's really important that people think about that, and the story that they're telling and what they're doing, because I think you tend to hear lots of things like, what your team going to do when AI is automated, all these things. You get very generic answers like they'll do the important things, they're going to do the human stuff, they're going to do what they should always be doing. And it's like, well, what does that mean, and what does that mean to the company in terms of value? And I think that's a really important thing to think about.
Mm-hmm.
I think to add a little bit into the trends for the final part here, just real quick, it's interesting because we don't use any software right now to review resumes. We kind of do it manually. I know people are using AI to write their cover letters, to rewrite their resumes to fit the job description. But I think we're going to be using AI to combat AI. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to come back to humans having to just use intuition and look at things and figure it out. Because I'm already seeing that. People will make a resume with every buzzword known to man to match it, and they write it with AI, and then you're going to get AI to review like, oh, that's too many matches. They must have used something to write it, and then it cancels out. And I think we're going to see that within the hiring train, where AI will be battling and trying to fake each other out. I think will be very interesting to see very soon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all for that. Just to close out the conversation about immigration, and then we'll transition over to talking more about DEI and workforce equity. Um, so the changes to the H-1B visa requirements on companies looking to fill technical roles, like what are some of the impacts that you all have seen with that?
I'll go a little bit into it because we sponsor it. We do TNs, H1B, and all that. I'll be honest. I'll go back even further. When Trump came in for his first administration, everything changed. It took actually a lot longer. We actually had to provide pictures. We had to adjust salary rates. We actually had to make the JDs longer to show there more requirements. So I'll be honest, we're not seeing that as we were the first time. But we are seeing less people trying to take their risks with H1Bs. We're seeing more people that really want to get that green card faster for us. I'll be honest, we didn't have it before, but we're building it now and working with certain lawyers to build that within our system. But we're seeing people who are scared to move jobs because they're in the middle, like, oh, I only have 3 more months before they sponsor my green card, or my I-140 is about to go through. I think people are less risk adverse at this time than the previous administration. But doing this for over 15 years, I think I'm used to seeing every administration is so much different and how they treat immigration. And we're talking earlier about students, right, Gerry? About students are less advice. Well, think about people on OPT when, okay, we're going to make it harder to get an H-1B. That's why they want to not come as well, because they're not guaranteed that going forward. So it's taking longer and moving forward. So yeah, I think we're seeing it here where we are doing it. We're getting it more involved, but candidates are less risk averse to move if they're in the middle of something that's really going to benefit them in the long run.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Gerry or Matt, anything to add on that?
Well, I mean, I do agree, Jacob. We've learned how to work the immigration sets of rules um, from administration to administration, whether it be a lottery, et cetera, et cetera. There's a set of rules. and it makes it easier for some individuals and some companies because they can kind of cook the books a little bit by knowing the rules really well, spending some money on a bunch of lawyers to get it all done. And then you've used up the allotment. And there's an awful lot of people who would like to come to this country who can't for any number of reasons, but basically because everyone else knows the rules, they don't necessarily, or they're just learning them. So I don't know if we still have the best system. We've got a lot of work to do to improve on it. We have almost no understanding of guest workers in relation to that. So when we get away from professional companies and we get into everything from agriculture to other things, there are serious problems we have with immigration, and it can take years for folks to work them out. And as a result, there's been a lot of abuses. So I'm not that optimistic that we're going to find a fair return anytime soon.
And just to add on that real quick, Jerry, yeah, it took my sister-in-law 19 years to finally get her visa to stay in America and coming here from South America, and she's non-tech. So it took a very long time for her to get that with it. And she doesn't work within agriculture, but she supports that industry.
Right. And you contrast that against, obviously we're a much bigger world, but 50, 60 years ago, people came to the border and answered a few questions and got a green card.
That was my
And
grandparents.
fundamentally were welcomed in. So I know that it's got to be more complicated than that, but I think our society should be up for it with the kind of technologies that we have.
Right.
Absolutely. And I would just add again, going back to the kind of reality of the situation. So certainly what the UK experienced after Brexit, which meant that suddenly there was no freedom of movement for Europeans, had a devastating impact on the service industry, the agricultural industry, which the country is still kind of recovering from and trying to deal with. And it was because the politicians wouldn't actually talk about the reality of the situation, that we won't have enough people to do this. What are we going to do about it? And it just became a political, we're not going to talk about it. And, you kind of then live through the results of it. So I just think that, having, just kind of understanding what the implications are of some of these things is kind of really important. But I guess politicians are the same everywhere, aren't they? So
guess we're seeing that, aren't we? All right, and let's move to DEI. So the current administration has shifted focus away from DEI, traditional DEI mandates, placing more emphasis on merit-based hiring and local job growth. So how do you all think that companies can continue meaningful DEI work amid this broader economic and political shifts that are deprioritizing equity and inclusion?
Well, I think that's essentially what the administration is saying, that we want to focus on merit. On the other hand, I never have come across a recruiter who ever said, you know what, I never focused on merit. I looked at race and said, oh, let's find somebody of that race and we'll just put them in the job.
Right.
Any recruiter that ever did that wouldn't be working for very long at all. So fundamentally, we've always had a primary focus on merit, and we put the finger, if you will, to weight the scale when we realize that within our organization, we have folks who are underrepresented in some areas there's plenty of qualified individuals that we could find if we reached out and spent a little money going to the Society of Women Engineers or the Black Engineers Conference or whatever it might be. If we had in our budget the ability to focus in on finding qualified, diverse folks and developing relationships with them such that they would be interested in our company, we would be building a diverse workforce of qualified individuals that represented our society. That would be perfectly cool. The move away from DE&I is a move away from investment in being able to reach out and build relationships with folks who are diverse because they are veterans, because they have different races, because they would of whatever. So we're looking for better channels, if you will, and investing in those channels to be able to have those conversations. And so that's a potential problem when we dismantle our ability to invest, if you will, in reaching out and engaging and building relationships with folks who are diverse. And we're just saying, whoever comes to the door, we'll just assume they're a pool. We won't ask them who they are. So none of the recruiters can really infer whether they're female or black or whatever in relation to that. So we'll just take our chances with whatever the proportions are in relation to that. And I got to tell you, it's going to be, it is already a problem. Many companies have very consciously, to avoid being called out, eliminated a lot of the verbiage, if you will, that focuses in on their commitment to diversity.
Mm-hmm.
But privately, they say to each other, but we're not going to change. We're still going to be focused on inclusion and diversity. And my response to that is, well, I hear what you're saying, but what message are you sending to your employees? What message are you sending to your candidates when all they see is the disappearance, if you will, of that commitment to diversity on your website and in other ways, in terms of your investments in going to specific conferences and other groups. So I think we have a need for a great deal more stepping up and risk taking on the part of employers to be able to share their commitment in a way that makes sense for themselves and makes them to some degree comfortable with how that's going to be perceived by others.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Matt.
Just
Jacob?
saying.
Yeah, I suppose again, kind of building on what Gerry said, but maybe kind of from a slightly sort of different angle here. Obviously, EU, UK, there isn't the same things going on around DE&I, so it's
Right.
kind of very much continuing as it was. The issue is that there are a number of multinational companies, American companies or companies who have a significant American presence, particularly ones who may do business with the US government, who have kind of sort of abandoned the use of the phrase DE&I everywhere in their business, which means that in the kind of European markets, there is a certain amount of damage to brand equity, because it's kind of like, well, were you really committed to this in the first place if you're just going to drop it just like that? And I think that it actually does affect their ability to hire, to compete in certain talent markets. And I think that it is a it's definitely that is definitely definitely an issue.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Interesting.
I think, Gerry, I agree with you. I think there's always been an investment in DEI in companies. I'll be honest, when I worked at Google, this is only in this 2012 now, I think back. And they were investing in hiring more females in the SRE group because it was one female for every 1,000 engineers.
Wow.
And they realized that it was way off and they started investing in it, building a team, but there was no announcement. There was no like, we're doing this commitment and we're doing this. I think companies are still investing in it. I think the issue is they're not, like you said, announcing it at this time. And we've been very blessed here at Drivemode, where I think about 40% of our engineering group, so that's design, product, and all that, is about 40% female, who identify as female. And we grew it organically. And I think it comes down from, we don't really have an announcement of what we do, but I think it comes down from how we like you said, based on merit and not looking for a certain type of people, but just hiring the best that are there. I think what made us a little unique, I think a lot of these companies what will help with DI is still going for those pools that are hard to find. For instance, I spend a lot of time investing in small groups. One of them is here in the Bay Area called Hack the Hood. I was very lucky where it's mostly students who live in Oakland, all probably about 80% are minorities. I was able to get one of my startups, we gave them all laptops. I went in to teach them how to use LinkedIn. And I was just talking to one yesterday, her name is Natalie, who leads the ERG group of Native American females at Adobe. And asking her, hey, do you know any cool people that we should be talking to for our design team? Do you have anyone that you can send over for this research I'm about to open next week? And she has a capacity in these pools. So it's taken time as recruiters to build this for myself, but I think it reaps rewards later on. I don't wait for a company to tell me we're going to invest money. It's really coming from there, and I think I really like that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Jacob, but you are also talking about your personal commitment.
Yeah.
Yep.
You are.
Yep.
As opposed to a commitment that is shared and discussed at every level within your organization, right? And it may be discussed within your organization, but the question is whether or not anyone outside your organization is hearing that discussion. I'm a
Yeah.
fan of radical transparency, and I think who we are and what we do needs to be literally on our sleeve in a variety of ways and promoted in a variety of ways. And we're very risk averse right now in being more verbal, more real in saying who we are. And I think that could hurt us long term.
Definitely. Jacob, you and I, when we had our first initial call talking about this panel, you talked a lot about your own experience and how to keep standards high while broadening opportunity through early education. So
Mhm.
this is kind of taking a little bit of a different road here, but early education, community investment. Can you expand a little bit on that strategy and how it plays out in your hiring processes?
In my hiring process, right? I think we have to understand that people who come like myself, right? My family worked in the fields. I was the first to graduate from college. We don't come from traditional backgrounds from there. And I think Jerry talked a little bit about that, right? And I think you did as well, Matt, about finding those right channels and groups. And I became a teacher for 5 years through college. And seeing that there's these great programs that we can invest in. And I think once again, I think I agree with you, Jerry. I think we can talk about it more and invest in that. But in our hiring principles, I think what we look at is we try not to consider education per se, like do they have a degree or not? Can they actually do the work? Let's create an interview process where they can showcase their skills. We don't have to look at their education or are they coming from these Googles or Fangs or these other companies? Do they have, these experience? Can they solve these problems that we have in front of us? And I think by us really creating a interview flow that looks at problem solving, moving in ambiguity, communication, I think we've been able to really do that and really build that here. I think that's why we've been very lucky. Uh, so yeah, kind of that. I mean that's what you're kind of going into. I think,
Mhm.
Krista.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. And someone put in the comment too, which I was just having a conversation with somebody about this last weekend, how AI is going to have a huge impact on the weight of the degree or even what a degree is, and are people even getting degrees anymore? Like the whole state of our education system. Would love to hear anyone's thoughts on this.
Just down here, I have friends who are still teachers, and they're actually having their kids use ChatGPT to write reports, to review it, and learning how to use AI to come up with like 5-page papers already. So I
Mhm.
mean, if this is yeah, so they're not even really writing the paper; they're just having it and editing, it. And they're ready. They're just they. Some teachers think that's the future.
Mm.
My
So yeah,
grandson, who's a sophomore in high school, every day he asks ChatGPT. He tells ChatGPT what he learned today in two of his classes, where class participation is 60% of his grade.
Mm.
And he asks then what the teacher will likely do tomorrow. and
Wow.
what questions a 16-year-old should be asking
Wow.
to look good. So I do think that candidates and others who are learning ahead of the employer are going to drive a lot of that use for AI for sure. We can't even possibly imagine some of the changes that they're going to demand that we have in our companies when they get there.
Mm.
Yeah, and I kind of add it just requires such a fundamental shakeup of understanding the skills that people need to learn. Critical thinking, all of these kind of things. That whole idea of memorizing stuff and then repeating it, and lots of the things that are still education systems that were designed for the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
They kind of need to change, but that's going to take time. And I think that there is a crazy time at the moment where people who are very proficient in AI are gonna, are gonna kind of really win the day until, until people kind of really work this out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the next even 5 years go with education. So as we start to wrap things up, we want to look forward a little bit. So curious to hear all of your opinions on just some advice for recruiting leaders. So if policy uncertainty is the new normal, what advice do you have for recruiting leaders for building for the future?
Okay,
I
who
can go
wants to
first
go
if
first?
you.
Go
Yeah, I'll
ahead,
go
Matt.
first. Yeah, I think two things. I think the first thing, what I said about that monetizing capacity. What's the plan? What's the vision for TA being proactive about that? I think the other thing, which comes from a podcast interview actually I did a few weeks ago with a guy called Toby Colshaw. It's a friend of mine who used to run talent intelligence at Amazon. He's gone somewhere else now, and we were talking about. That we live in this BANI world where BANI stands for brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible, which I think is a good way of describing it. And kind of what that means, and it means that companies are going to have to be much more flexible, move much more quickly, look at real-time data rather than plan years in advance. And he kind of really identified an opportunity for TA there, that actually TA is out there talking to the market all of the time, and gathering intelligence about what's going on. And actually, there's a role there in terms of, inputting that intelligence back into the, back into the business about what's really going on in talent markets, what people are saying, what other companies are doing, which I thought was a really interesting, a really interesting take.
Cool.
Oh,
I think there's.
no, go ahead, Sure, go ahead,
Oh, no,
Jared.
go ahead, Jacob. Go for it.
No, I said my advice, if you want to know how the market feels and what to think, ask the candidates. I talk to people with H-1Bs, people who are coming with TNs, OPTs, or just people in general. What do you see out there? How do you feel about the year? And get ready for those questions. And I think the biggest thing is don't plan too far ahead. We were planning late last year for the next 2 years or 5-year plan. We now see that we have to be, you know what? Nope, we have to take this in sections and be ready at any moment. Be nimble, be quick. But once you make that decision, move as quick as you can, because it
And
could change tomorrow or it could adapt. But one thing is, my favorite thing is talking to the market, and I share that with my leaders, and that informs them on their decisions because no one knows no idea what people are thinking until you talk to them. I do about probably 15 to 20 phone calls a week with candidates, and that's a lot of market data over 1 month.
100%.
love it.
Yeah.
Actually, the first thing that I was going to, there's two things that I think constantly about, and one of them is what Jacob just said, is I don't believe we can have more than like a 6-month span of looking forward. And that fundamentally we need to shorten our span from 5 years to 6 months, or to some degree, look at your industry, look at your company, look at your whatever, and be nimble and quick, or expect to be, because things will change. And you've got to be able to measure the shift with which things are happening. So in the short run, you're doing that. But in the long run, I think there should be significant conversations in every employer, within every employer, about the kinds of people who are going to be coming at us a year, 2 years, years down the road. And yes, it's a little bit of tomorrow file, a little bit of speculative thinking. And these are folks who are not yet ready, but when they are ready, they will have the skills that we will be looking for. So it's a little bit of an odd kind of conversation that you would have. And the question is, where are they now? Are they in high school? Are they in college? Are they not in college, but wandering the world? Are they, what is the situation that we might think about? How do we get in touch with them? How do we start building a relationship with them? Think about one of the things that almost in every country, in every company of any size, you try to develop relationships with interns. So we have a formal way, historically now, of building a relationship with someone who is not ready for us. But hopefully we get to meet them, engage them, do something with them, invest with them, and some of them are going to come work for us. But the world's changing, and it won't be just interns. They may not be in college. Where do we find them? Do we find them in the Peace Corps, in some other aspect of how they may be working beyond taking a gap year, doing something? And I got to tell you, if we start thinking strategically around that, there's more operational approaches that we might develop that will make use of those folks who are really smart, really committed to hiring for the future. But we're no longer having to deal with the day-to-day transactional pieces because AI is taking care of the automation of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this gives us a whole new way of thinking about our future workforce and the plans we come. And we're getting out in front of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Gerry. And we're going to wrap up now. We're just about out of time here. So just wanted to give one last huge thank you to Gerry, Matt, and Jacob here. Really, really some interesting perspectives and points of view. I love that we tied in the international perspective as well on these really important and impactful topics. And thanks to everyone for joining us. We will send out the recording along with the profiles of Gerry, Matt, and Jacob. So feel free to connect with them. I also put it in the chat here. And for those of you who are looking for more great content and virtual events, we have coming up tomorrow a session on compensation, which is going to be really, really great. We have a volunteer opportunity to do some mock interviews with students. And we're also going to be talking about reporting and forecasting for H2 at the end of the month. So look out for all of those great virtual sessions coming up, and hope to connect with you all soon. And thanks again for being here, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Take care.
care.
Thanks, everyone.